My name is Chris Wharton, and I'm an associate professor in the nutrition program at Arizona State University. And I'm extremely excited to have Jean-Martin Fortier here to offer this incredible workshop on profitable small-scale farming. This is a collaboration that's been months in the making with a lot of organizations, and I want to just call some of them out now. So Kelly Young, for example, at U of A Cooperative Extension, helped put this on, along with Steadfast Farms and Eric Schultz. And a number of other folks are contributing to this event. So I just want to make mention of one of the other organizations involved in this workshop. It's called the Food Systems Transformation Initiative. And so this is a new organization at ASU. It's one that I direct. And it's really focused on broadly equitable participation in the food system. And that means we really care about food security and people's ability to have access to healthy, oftentimes locally produced, culturally appropriate, affordable food. But it's also about ensuring that people can have livelihoods in the food system. And so this event is really an important piece of that. We really care about having an integrated and diverse food system and allowing people to have the opportunity to be producers and participate in the food system from that perspective as well.
I talked a little bit this morning about our strategy for weed control. And I actually referred it to weed prevention, okay? So a big part of running an operation of, mixed, diversified organic farm is to how to manage the weeds. And I keep going to trade shows where you'll see lineups of growers waiting to see what next tools will do the weed control on their farm. Flex-tine weeders, torsion weeders, budding cages, robot cultivators. All of these, it seems, need, they seem to have all of them to make the cultivation efficient on their farm. And I always thought, we should look at this from another perspective, and if we can eliminate most of the weeds before they pop up, then, we don't need to be so sophisticated with weed control. This being said, on our farm, we've been following two strategies pretty religiously. The first one is that we're cultivating the soil, and we cultivate it when it's like that. When the weeds are gently coming up or they're just about to. And it's at that time that when you go with a hoe, by just the action of working the soil, you'll destroy them and it won't be a bother anymore. So we're cultivating when it's already clean. Obviously, we're doing it when it's bright and sunny. Here, it's probably not an issue. So that makes a difference. The other thing is that we never let weeds go to seed anywhere on the farm. Because when that happens, you multiply your problem by 40,000 times. Okay? Easier said than done, but that's something that we've put in practice and in motion for many, many years, making sure that we never let them go to seed. So if you're not multiplying your seed base, then eventually you might diminish the seed bank. And I know we'll never get to a no-weed system, because that's the way nature works. It doesn't want to have bare soil, and that's the mechanism that it uses to populate the earth and to have vegetable covering. So we follow that, and we use hand hoes, okay, that we keep sharp. We use this, I don't know what the word is for that in English. It's like a carbon teeth. It really sharpens fast. I carry that in my pocket. I always tell my worker, when you're hoeing, you want to make sure that you're really working like that. So you want to work with the bottom, the top of the tool. You want to have long handle hoes, and you really want to be going like that. And that's so fun. It's a breeze. Cultivating is my favorite job on the farm. And it allows me to interact with the plant. It allows me to see what's happening. And it's just a good moment. Not to downplay the people that have tractors, but when you're cultivating on a tractor and just zipping through the fields, you don't have that same connection to the plants, because you have the connection with the engine. We have the connection with the plant. And I think that has brought my attention to to the vegetable part of our operation, the botanical sensitivity that I've developed. So different hose, and actually with close spacings, these were transplanted, 3 weeks later we go, and then simply working the soil like that, breaking the crust, letting more oxygen into it, and that's it. That was a pretty fast video. Perhaps we could watch it again. Oops. Come on in, guys. That's fine. You missed a couple of jokes, but that's all. All right.
Have you ever used a Cobra head weeder?
No, because we want to try and cultivate as wide as we can between the spacings. Okay, so what you saw here was just practice, and after a while you get good at this. And with the close spacings, the fact that you're doing this once is good enough to really be effective with weed control using hose. Okay? This is a wheel hoe. We also use it in the aisles. So the pathways are cultivated with the wheel hoe. If you haven't tried the wheel hoe yet, you'll be excited. It's a pretty nice tool. This is another example of how things are moving fast. This is a electric wheel hoe that's being developed in Oregon. It's battery powered. It's interesting. Not totally fine-tuned yet, but there's a lot of innovative things coming up now. So we managed to keep the 10 field blocks pretty clean. And with Photoshop, it's really easy. You just remove them all and you make nice presentations. So hoeing at the right time, cultivating just shallowly, not letting the weeds go to seed, but there's a bit more to it, okay? The intensive spacings, we talked about that. You guys understand the canopy. Not rototilling, not bringing seeds from the bottom up, makes a difference. Tarping makes a difference. Transplanting makes a big difference. So if you're starting everything from seeds, it's going to be hard to compete against the weeds. But if you're transplanting and your plants, they already have 2, 3, 4 weeks head start over the weeds, you'll be good to go. So all of these are all solutions that are basically cost neutral. You don't need to invest into this pricey equipment. You just need to organize and work in a preventive mode. Okay? So that's how I think a market gardener should operate. Always trying to figure out how he can do things up front. We also use a flame weeder on the farm. I'll answer your question after that. So flame weeding is a great way to avoid weeds in the carrot beds. So if you've interned on the farm, you've done that, which is hand pulling weeds in the carrots. And we call the carrots dirty crops because since they take such a long time to germinate, weeds always have a lot of time to populate the area around or besides the carrots. So how we go about this is that we'll prepare the seed bed 10 days prior to our carrot seeding date. Okay? And so we'll raise the beds if we need to. We'll broad fork. We'll put the compost. We'll put the harrow. We'll mark our rows. And then we'll let the beds stale for 10 days. Sometimes we'll water them. Sometimes we'll even put row cover to try and trigger the germinating of these weeds. 10 days later, I'll seed my carrots. So carrots, they usually take from 8 to 12 days before they germinate. So if you follow through, almost 20 days later, when the carrots are ready to germinate, it might look like that because the weeds had a really good head start. Just before the carrots are ready to emerge, I'll go with my flame weeder, zip down the bed, and destroy all the weeds that have germinated, and then the carrots will pop up the day after into a weed-free bed. Okay? So that's called pre-emergence flame weeding. And it's definitely a great solution to weeding the carrot beds. Did everybody catch the sequence of how we do things? Okay, so the carrots are buried and it doesn't harm it. And if the weeds are small enough, this flame weeder works wonder. You can't burn a big weed, so they need to be small. This is the most amazing, this is a poster that I'd like to have in my house. Because I'm like, if I can get rid of this before the crop, man, this is great. So it works, but if ever there's a problem and you forget or you don't go at the right time and then your carrots start to germinate in here, then you're, okay? Because there's nothing more you can do. So what I do is I put a bunch of beet seeds at the start of the bed when I seed my carrots. So when I see all these purple leaves starting to come up, that's my indicator that it's time to flame weed the bed, because beets will always germinate before carrots under the same growing conditions. Okay? When I'm doing beets, I'll use a bunch of radish seeds that I just put at the start of the bed. And there you go. The other two things, I thought I would hear, wow, this is great. You guys haven't weeded carrot beds, right? So the other thing that's important is that the flame weeder needs to be something that looks like that. For two reasons. In my climate changes all the time. So when it's time to flame weed, it might be a day where it's pouring cats and dogs. And so I need to make sure that my flame has enough BTU to really destroy everything. So there's 5 torches on 30-inch, and it's in a box. So even if it's windy, the flame will be able to touch the soil, and it's going to work. Okay? So if you're trying this at home with a 1-torch flame weeder, it's not going to work. Or it's not going to work as well. And then you'll say, oh yeah, JM, you talked to me about this. And so this is an important part of the process, the tool. Well, you could start a fire. I don't know. Well, perhaps yes. It'd be quite bizarre to have a field on fire, but if you have straw, perhaps it can burn, but yes. Yeah, they wilt. They'll be removed the next day, but you see them that they just fan. So you're not torching them. You're just giving a thermal shock. So their cell explodes, and then the next day they'll be dying off. Okay?
But it's not like.
No. They're still there. Yes. Okay, so because you understood that when we tarp, there's no more weeds, which is not true, or not the case. When we tarp, we have less weed pressure. We still have weeds. When you flame weed in pre-emergence, there's a big chance that you won't get any more weeds. Not guaranteed. Depends on your weed pressure on the farm. On certain farms that's been rototilled for many years, man, and that the weeds have been let go, you'll have weeds for such a long time. So that's why you need to be diligent and be hoeing and cultivating at the right time, and to have all these systems in so that you're always on the weeds. The worst that can happen is that, and it happens to all of us, you lose control of the farm. So there's been too many things that are happening. certain beds that needed to be cultivated, didn't have time to do it. Now the weeds are this big. Now it's a pain because you need to go by hand, remove everything. And unless you have a nice aunt or a super cool uncle that has nothing to do, it's just counterproductive to do that. So that's why you always need to be hoeing and cultivating in prevention. Yes? About that. Is that good enough? 2 miles an hour? Yep. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'll get to that. So, plastic mulch is another solution that we use on the farm. This is biodegradable plastic mulch. We use it for crops that are there 100 days or more, because it's a lot of effort to put these in with the drip tapes. And so all the nightshades are under plastic like that. So then you limit the weeding to only the holes. Okay? So we do this with a shovel, by hand. It works. And then we'll put landscape fabric in the aisles. Okay? So we did that for many years. So by doing this that way, then you really eliminate most of the weed pressure. And since we were doing it that way, we figured out, well, might as well just have one big landscape fabric and make the holes according to the plant. So we know that we have 4 beds of eggplants. They're 1 row, 18-inch. So we have a landscape fabric just for them. For the bell peppers, it's going to be another one, so on and so forth. Yes? We try to get the better ones because the cheap ones, they tend to disintegrate, and then there's fibers, plastic fibers in your fields. The best is to get used one from a nursery that is closing or something like that. Yeah, that's why we burn it. Because all the edges are sealed, so there's no more little fibers. So it takes about a minute to make not 30 seconds. You just go psh, and then you burn like that. Okay? So this is what you don't want. Pulling weeds by hand is what you really want to avoid at all costs. Okay? When that happens, it's a symptom that you could have done things, I don't want to say better, but better. And for us, the salad mix like this, which was 12 rows on the bed, was a great teacher for many years, because when there's 12 rows, you don't have space for hoeing between the rows. And you definitely don't want to do that. So it was all about finding strategies to not have weeds. And for many years, our solution was to stale seed beds, to do the staling of the seed beds. So what I would do is I needed to harvest 2 beds of salad mix per week. So I planted 4 every 2 weeks. And the reason why I wanted to plant 4 was that my sprinkler line would water 2 beds on each side. Okay? And once you've seeded, you want to keep it moist all the way till germination. So you're watering 3 or 4 times a day. Okay? So I would water these 4 beds after they were seeded. And when I was seeding these beds, I would go and prepare the soil for the next 4. That would be in 2 weeks. And then I would put the irrigation line also on these 4 beds. So when I was watering these guys, I was also watering the next 4. And prior to planting, I would come with my flame weeder and destroy the weeds that have popped up. And before that, there had been a tarp. So that was 6 weeks prior. That would have been the ideal setup But since I had a big shortage of land, this was something that I couldn't follow through for the whole season with this sequence. But that's a great way to do weed prevention. So there's inoculation, and then there's the stale seed bed. You destroy it with the flame weeder, and then you seed in it. And then you should be fine. They watered with drip irritation, I call it. Because you conserve water, it's amazing, but every time you need to cultivate, you need to remove the drips.
Was it in the aisle?
It was on the bed. Did everybody get that? That's a great way to approach things. So let's say I was to start a new farm, and I had space. I would prepare all my beds. Let's say they're all one beside another. And then I would have a black tarp covering the first part. And every time I would be ready to plant, I would move the tarp. And the tarp would be doing the work. And then I would plant. And then when it's time to plant some more, I would move the tarp. You get it? When I was doing this, I also wanted to have spring mix really early in the spring. And so we would raise our beds higher, because this doesn't really apply to you guys, but still, there's value in it. I would raise the beds higher so they would warm up faster in the spring, and I would put clear plastic in the fall over these beds. I would put clear plastic because it would really warm up the soil when temperatures are going down below frost. And then some of the weeds would pop and germinate under the clear plastic because it's like a greenhouse. So it was like almost at frost conditions, and then there I was popping up weed seeds, and then I would cover it with black plastic, and then that would kill all the weeds that had germinated. And then I would remove the black plastic, and in the spring, this would warm up really fast. And then I would remove the plastic and then plant, and there wouldn't be any weeds because I had germinated the fall prior to it. Always trying to work ahead of the schedule. Yes? Well, when you're doing this late in the fall, in my climate, you're not solarizing. This is just warming up, just creating like a good condition. If you're doing this in the summer, then what you're doing is you're burning the weed seeds. You can go all the way down to about 1 inch or 2. And effectively, you're sterilizing your soil. So one thing about sterilizing is that you never know who's going to come back. So it's like a gamble. You understand what I mean? It might be some microorganisms that are not so fun. So I've been kind of shy to really work this approach, especially that I don't have extra space in the summer to really solarize. So this is a graph of all the beds and in a year, and I try to have sequence where there's occultation and then there's something. So I try to map out the whole season, trying to put as many parameters as possible, making sure that I'm preventing weeds. And that's a great way to do it. This is something that I kind of found one day. It's called a grass stitcher. And it allows me to work between the rows of the 6-row seeder. So that's another strategy I use. It works, but it's not the best.